So these parties either are individuals or legal entities. In other words, you as an individual can create a trust, a company can create a trust, a government can create a trust, so any legal entity can create a trust. The question is, for what purpose? And the question is, once the trust has been created, what next? Do you know any trust that has been created by the government? Which one? Public trustees is that body that is actually, is that public body that plays a role of trustee, and it plays a role of trustee where somebody has died without a will, therefore it is the one that takes care of the interests of that person. So there's a public trustee, a trustee that plays that role on behalf of everybody who falls under it. Because if I've sorted out my life and have a will, that will be done through administrators, will be done through the court. But if I don't have and the government has to do it, it will do it through the public trustee. Yes, there's public trustee, but that's a creation of the law. So it's there. But there are also other trusts that the government has created. Tell me one. NSSF is actually a trust, yeah. NSSF is a trust, but by law as well. Any other? Very good. This guy, and there used to be a girl from Makueni who was the CEO of that. She was called Engineer Jacqueline Musyoki. Water Trust Fund. It's actually a trust created by the government. Its business is to receive money from donors, from government, to do water projects. It has a lot of money from EU, a lot of money from the World Bank, and others. And government. And I once served in it, by the way, I once served in it as a trustee. I was on the board for 3 years, appointed by Charity Ngilu when she was the CS. Not by my fellow, but by Charity Ngilu. No, I tell you, nye ni mukamba. So the point is, there are trusts that can be created by government. I've given you examples, can be created by companies, but they can also be created by individuals. Now, we are individuals because eventually, as I will tell you, Aga Khan and USAID will not be part of the creation of this, in terms of the legal. So they will not be on that trust deed. So under trust arrangement, the set law transfers legal ownership. And I want to give you an example. I told you about my father and I told you how I'm an orphan. And you have not even sympathized with me. When my father was alive and he was thinking about how to pass his land, he had an idea, like all fathers do, that gawa shamba yako kutoka huko mpaka ipite compound iende huko. So because he was married, I told you he was married to more than 3 wives officially and others that we don't know. So he wanted to subdivide his land this way, this way, this way. The net effect was that mahali ambapo my mother alizikwa na mahali ambapo angezikwa was also going to be given out to somebody else. So I told him, that's a good idea. Lakini, can you imagine if you gave Ngina this place and then Ngina fences off these graves and says this is personal property? How will you access it when you are gone? Even if you wanted to come and visit. Of course, there's nothing to visit on a grave, but we are Africans. We like going back to visit the graves. This bishop will tell you there's nothing theological about it. And he says, indeed, there's nothing theological. But why is it that after Jesus had been buried and he had risen, the women went to see where he had been buried? What was in the grave? Of course, they went to prove that the grave was empty. But even if it was not empty, they had gone to visit the grave. Is my theology correct? The point is that people visit graves for all sorts of reasons. Now, let me make the point I'm making. We agreed, or I convinced him to say, that where the compound is and where, because I have a small house there, and his house which I built for him and other things are there, including my mother's grave. Now he's there, by the way. Now his grave is there. We agreed to create a trust and put the ownership of that particular piece of land inside the trust. So in that respect, my father was a settlor. He put that piece of land under the trust. When we were taking tea, you can ask me how we identified the trustees. And we identified. Not on ourselves, we identified our children. One of my child who is a trustee, another one, we identified from the grandsons of his, the grandchildren. So those ones are the ones we put in trust. So they hold it, and then they'll also transfer to grandchildren. So they will be, that place respected. And what we said in that place is, anyone, our sisters, or anybody who, for some reason, has nowhere else to stay, or was married in Ukambani and the Kambas have rejected her, can come back and find a place where she can put up a house. That's the logic. So that place is being held on behalf of others, not by our children for themselves, but for our children, for the other great-grandchildren of the late Mzee. So trustees, settlers, give legal ownership of assets to the trustee to hold for the benefit of the beneficiaries. So the beneficiaries in that respect are all of us, including myself. And by the way, when he divided his land, I did not ask for a piece because I didn't think that I wanted to fight with other people for small pieces. When God has endowed me with so many things, including the Kamba people. So because if I want land here, you think sitapata? Simutanipatia tu? And I will not be chased away. And on that note, I need to go away with mangoes. Anybody who needs to know how I should get mangoes? I need to go away with mangoes. I can't live here without anything. This is not a season for Nzuu. I would have taken Nzuu, but I must go with mangoes. So let's organize that one. So the point is, assets owned or held on behalf of beneficiaries. Are we learning something? Yes, sir. This is my reason of coming here.
I'm looking at where we are in terms of as settlers, and the fact that we are also residents of Makueni. Is there a window where somebody can challenge that we are actually creating a trustee or a trust with ourselves in mind?
Yes, somebody can challenge depending on what you are doing. I'm going somewhere with this conversation by saying that if you are a settler, please do not think that you can also be a trustee. Because if you are giving birth to a child, you cannot be your own child. Isn't it? Yeah. You are giving birth to a child, and then you also want to be a child. So who will be the father? Or who will be the mother? So yes, as we create this, our roles are becoming different. And I'll show you how we have defined those roles in other respective places. Okay. You still have a role, but it is different from now the trustees. Are you a beneficiary? Yes, because this whole thing is for Makueni people. Are you a Makueni person? Yeah. Can you benefit from it? Yes. But can you own it? No. Can you say, yeah, it's the one who created it? Of course you can say, but does that give you rights? No, because you transferred the ownership rights to the trustees, who hold on behalf of others, not on their own behalf, not on your behalf, because you have already transferred. You know, when you transfer a property from yourself to your wife, or to your husband, or to your son, or to your daughter, the ownership goes. Utaanza kuitwa aliyekuwa mwenye shamba. So nyinyi mtaanza kuitwa waliokuwa. But of course, in this process, that's why that discussion of co-creation was so important, that we are participating in a process where we are also consumers, but generating ideas how this process will be done. And the ideas are such that they have no conflict of interest once they have been put up. Very nice. Aya. Trusts are created through a written document which sets out the duties and powers of a trustee. Now, two things there. By the way, I am giving you free legal classes. Imagine it's paid for by DFID, by USID. Free legal classes. No, okay, I'm giving you legal aid. So it's not for free, but it's aid. So I'm giving you legal aid. So this can either be a settlement document or a declaration of trust. The slight difference is this, that where I sit here and write and say, so and so, take this in my will. That's a settlement document. Wherever. So I give you through a certain. But the trustees that we shall have, once we have agreed on how we shall identify them, and once we have identified them, shall sit together, and they shall then declare the trust, a declaration of trust. They will declare that together, as they sign before me witnessing, which I was doing the day before I came here, which was when? That was Tuesday. Yeah, they now have formed a trust. So there's a trust in Nakuru because the 7 identified trustees have signed and declared so. So that is a declaration of trust. So thereafter, a trust deed is drafted which contains the name of the trust, the objectives of the trust, addresses of the trustees, and powers of the trustees. Power has shifted from settlors to trustees, and that power is being entrenched and described in a trust deed. A trust deed is a document that is registered as such by the Ministry of Lands. It's registered as a document. In other words, the power to establish the trust is not dependent on the registration process at the Ministry of Lands. It is embedded, entrenched, and determined at a point at which the trustees so declare. Malisikia? Vile malisema? You know, I'm a teacher. So nataka hii point ingie ndani ya. What have I said? I have said it is not the government that determines whether there is a trust or not. It's not the registrar that determines whether there's a trust or not. It's the people who meet and sign and declare that there be a trust who are the major determinants. So is there anybody else who can then write off that trust unless it is those people? The rest is legal process where you register that as a document in the government. That registration gives you the power to produce that document before a bank, before a donor, before anybody else, as a sign that there's a trust. But the trust is established by the trustees through a declaration and signature. That's how powerful the trust deed is, and that's why I think that you are not wrong in taking this route, because this is the right route when you are creating an organization that is going to take people's resources. It should be difficult for that organization to be proscribed by the government or any other entity, unless a discussion between the settlors and the trustees determine otherwise. And one of the laws and one of the provisions of the trust deed means that even if we were to dissolve the trust the resources of that trust can only be transferred to similar objectives. You cannot transfer them to your pocket, not to your church, not to your mudhoniwa, nundu ila asset menayo idho imonda kana kitheka ti chao ni cha ando angi, so you can only transfer it to people with similar objectives. Now, of course, what we are saying is that the whole law that drives the trust agenda is, yes, Kenyan law, but also dependent on the Kenyan practice, or rather the English practice under the common law. And therefore, this is a law that is also fortified and secured by the common law practice in the UK. I have said they are created under the Act or the Trustees Perpetual Act, which is Cap 167 or 164. I have mentioned that. But there are also other statutes, there are also other laws that affect the trust, such as the income tax and tax procedures. So generally, what we are saying is that most of these processes depend on the English law, and the basic nature of it is you have a set law, then you have a trustee, and you have a beneficiary relationship. And this can be for public. I give a new example of the Water Services Trust Fund, or for private, and I've given you other examples for those. Of course, there is the issue of incorporation, and this is something that I want to talk a bit about. After trustees have declared a trust, and the trust deed has been registered by the government, we have said they have formed a trust around them. However, as trustees in that respect, they are answerable collectively, and they are also answerable severally. But in general, each trustee is answerable. You can, if you want to sue them, you sue them as individuals. If they want to sue, they also sue as individuals. However, with time, once they have established themselves, there is a process that happens which then leads towards incorporation of the trust. That process happens by way of the trustees petitioning or seeking that they want to be incorporated. There's a minute that is done, and the cabinet secretary is the one that incorporates them. So the incorporation process is then an affirmation that they have a certificate, because initially there will be no certificate because it will be the registration after stamping the documents. That's what you produce. But then later on, it takes a bit of a while after formation, whatnot, for purposes of also just making sure there is some activity, some accounts open, and some formation happening, so that you don't just register today and you're incorporated tomorrow. The signs that you are actually in business. There was even a time they were insisting that you must have land, but that's something that we have since been arguing against, and now the practice is that the cabinet secretary can just incorporate. So that process will happen maybe in 6 months or maybe in 12 months, depending on when we register, when it takes action, when it hits the ground. Now, that said, that is the road towards how the trust will be formed in Makueni. And now, of course, later on we'll be talking about how will we then get the trustees. We've done it in the other areas. We followed the due process. So far, we have no regret or nothing to complain about, because the people of Nakuru, for example, who went through that process were very transparent, very upfront, separated themselves from the issue, but they observed the process. I chaired the meetings as the interview panel. I did not participate in the shortlisting. but chaired the process, which was observed by the interim committee members as settlers, observed by the community members who were selected, observed by USID, observed by AKF, it was observed by everybody. And it gave us men and women who were so happy to meet on Monday and to have an induction with them for a day, half a day. The following day, they read through the trust deed and they signed. You see, it's possible. So, I will show you, and Fred, you have in that much, the Nakuru Trust. Yeah, put it there so I show them how it looks like. It's Nakuru one. It is something that we want to show you how we've done it. I'll define for you the terms that we have used there and how we are likely to use them here. And then if you think that's the right thing, if you agree with that, if you want to add in something, you are free. I'll give you time to do that. Once you finish, we'll start walking the journey towards identification of trustees, and then put them in place, give them an induction, get them to commit themselves. So, as Fred brings up that example of the trust deed, we are at version 4 now, which is what we are working with. It's been improved a little bit. Can I actually send you the one that has names, eh? You have that? Yeah, the one that Bernard, we used with Bernard the other day. Yeah? So, yeah, give us the one that has the names. So we want to use. I want to talk about 3 things. And they are all about governance, and they are all about accountability. The first one is we have said that the organization we are forming is community-owned, community-led, and community-driven. And for that reason, it's assumed that the various CBOs, NGOs, whatever groups that there are, associations, that some of which you represent, and those others that are not here, that's why we have the social mobilization process that is being done by Martha, will identify people who will accept, or organizations that will accept to be members of the trust. As members, at least they'll commit themselves by paying something. Numisi ati makamba asiai ati inyawa mana no akuye. You know what I've said? The mother of 3 things died. Huh? Because you see, you cannot be a member who has not committed something. So whatever amount that you will commit for membership will be something that you will decide at your own, within your own context. But there must be something that makes you a member, which you pay on a regular basis. As a member, you will be entitled to attend the annual general meeting of the trust. So there will be an annual general meeting, and there will be a role for the annual general meeting. Yeah? So there will be the trustees as a structure, the board of trustees. The board of trustees will also appoint staff, a CEO, a director, whatever they call them. The staff will also appoint others, resource mobilization, communications, monitoring, evaluation, systems development, whatever it is. They'll have responsibility. They'll report to the trustees. The trustees will have responsibility to manage, to govern the management, to lead them. Then there will be a few forums that we've created. Yeah, so yes. So just go up a bit. Go down or up. So this is for Nakuru. That's the name they've chosen. Forget about that. what you need to see is not, up. So the structure of this trust deed will have that title as it is because it's a legal requirement, plus the name and the preamble. And in the preamble, which is likely to be the same, is the United States International Development Agency in partnership with the Aga Khan Foundation in East Africa through a program called YETU in collaboration with the Makueni County government, in collaboration. Remember, Makueni County government has been part and parcel of this. In collaboration, seek to establish, now we'll say the name, and say what it will be about, and we'll also say the purpose, and it's a Makueni thing. Then move on. Of course, the issues of values, the issues of principles in the Constitution will be repeated, and the issues of those principles in the Constitution of Kenya 2010, not 2020, I don't know where that came from, but that's okay. 2010. You've seen the mistake? Yeah. Sawa, that's a mistake, we'll sort it out. It's okay, at least we spotted it, so we'll pick it out. Thank you. Now, okay, let's move on. Now that's the structure. So those of you in this room, your organizations will be named by name. In this case, that's what it is. The contracts of yourselves. Move on. So that will be on one part. So you will be the settlers on one part. You will be the appointers on one part. And then the other part, which has names, I think what you have is not the updated one, but it's okay. So now, just a minute, before you go too far. Yeah, go up again. Yeah, so the trustees will all be named here by name and their physical addresses. We don't have them for now, but at least we know about you, the interim steering committee, so that is something easier to do. Twende chini. So, of course, those provisions, and what I'll do, as soon as I finish this, I'm going to give you a blank trust deed, which will not have any name and anything inside, for you now to begin to work around and to review it and to see whether there's anything specific about Makueni that you would like to see in there. And we'll call that version 1, which means that in another week or so, you'll have finished with version 1, or even by the end of the day today, mtaangalia mseme hii version iko namna hii, but you have comments, you bring them back through Fred, we look at them, we customize those comments, make it Makueni specific. In the meantime, you will be struggling to do one thing, finding a name for your. And you don't have to imitate what they've done. Create your own. Unique. Create your own unique name. You can call it a stone, a rock, whatever it is, whatever is unique about Makueni. But no, don't name it after the most notorious fellow. At least if it's somebody or if something, let this be somebody who is. But also don't name it after the name of the first governor of Makueni, because then people will say hiyo ni yake. So make sure you get a name that will make us all relate to it. So we'll name that. We will give you the space. Yeah, let's go down. The definition section, that is something standard. We will talk about a pointer, a set law, and so on. We'll make sure that there's consistency in all those things. Founders, you are going to be in the category of founders because you are also playing a role of being the backers or being the initiators of this. We will define what the General Assembly is. Go on. Go on. of course, we say this now, it is hereby declared. So that's the declaration element of what I was saying earlier. And the name, then the objectives, and the objectives again are fairly standard, but you can couch them specifically to yourselves. The issue of appointment of trustees. Let me speak to that issue. Yeah, the appointment of trustees. Yeah. The initial trustees will be appointed by yourselves, because in that respect you will be referred to as founders. Now, what I have done in the other places is to build into this a staggering mechanism that will allow not all trustees to leave at the same time, but some to be in while others leave, so that the terms are anywhere between 5, 7, and 8 years. So that at any one given time, not everybody leaves. But there is a term limit. You cannot, as a trustee, extend your term to become like Museveni's term for life. And we believe that that mechanism will self-create itself. You yourselves will play a role initially, and then the whole thing will take a life of its own, because even you as the appointers and founders will have a term limit and then also exit, so that you can play another role in a different way. Who said that after your first term you may not play a role as a trustee? You can, but that means that that will be something else that can be discussed. Uko mbele, not now. For now, you can't. If your term expires, you end. But you see, the other danger is every one of you, after your term expires, you mtatafuta kutaka kuingia kwa trust, na mnaweza kuleta shida. So again, you better watch yourselves. What is it that's driving you? What is it that is driving your intentions? Some of you may want to resign as appointers, become staff. But you have to resign. You cannot be both. Uko na kule. So, and then of course the appointment of trustees, I've talked about it, Endelea. The term of appointers, that one we'll define. Now you can tell me what you think works for you. I have suggestions and what is working for Nakuru. Now you'll tell me what works for you. And then powers of the trustees is going to be explained there. It's in the law. There's very little that we can do to change it, but we can change a few things that we think are important in our case. So powers going all the way to PQ. And then we have defined the meetings, how meetings will be held, how they'll have officers, how they'll raise monies and how the monies will be kept. Then the various offices, how an office can be vacated, how when a trustee and even an appointer can vacate office through death, through resignation, through being declared bankrupt, and so on. Or if today we sat here, or you as appointers sat, and decided that Ngina's behavior, because she was seen in a place in a manner that was publicized, and it seems to have brought bad, maybe, something that you don't think is correct, and you sat as appointers or they sat as trustees and they decided that they want Ngina to go, that can be done. It's like impeachment process. It can be done. So an appointer can be impeached. A trustee can be impeached. Hapo tuko pamoja? Haya, tuendelee. Indemnity. You and trustees, insofar as you are carrying out your work in good faith, you cannot be sued as long as, even if you make a mistake, you are making those mistakes in good faith. You do not mean to do it. It happened because it's okay. That's all right. So you are indemnified. You are also protected. And there's the issue of the common seal. There's the issue of the organs of the trust. The General Assembly, I've explained how the General Assembly is. But we are also proposing an appointers and trustees forum. In other words, once a year as appointers and trustees, you need to come together to review how things are going so that trustees can account to you, so that you can also be appraised on what's happening. So that's a mechanism that allows an interaction. It's not a legal mechanism per se, but it's inbuilt here. But the drivers, the people in the driver's seat on matters of the trust are the trustees. But you need a mechanism that gives you an opportunity to interact. And then dispute resolution. And then how a trust can be amended. Like any constitution, like any document, amendments can be done. And winding up, I explained that if trustees at any time agree to discontinue the trust, then assets that are remaining after sorting out debts and liabilities shall not be paid or distributed among the trustees, but shall be given to such other charitable institution or institutions having similar objects to those of the trust, as the trustees in their absolute discretion shall decide. And then in witness, in this particular case, you can see these people have signed, have witnessed, and they have signed. And those are real names. Yeah. So I'll give you this document, but it will be without any of those names, and it will be for you now to look at and for you to input into it. We were told by Ngina that we are tired of carrying the pregnancy. Let's begin the process of heading towards maternity ward. Even though our medical personnel are on strike. But in Makueni, I don't think they're on strike, are they? They are not, yeah? So, yeah. So, if they are not on strike, that means that the process can be sooner. Josephine, the process can be sooner, since the medics are on duty. In my view, they might need some time to process this together and to make some changes or whatever they want, give us an updated version. But in the meantime, I think that what we now need to discuss is to agree on how we shall progress, A, to finalize the trust, deed, and B, to recruit the trustees, because finalizing it is only after we have names that we can put in there, and we can do an induction and a process that can bring us all at one place. I want to give room for questions. I'm hoping that in that presentation I have covered yesterday the issues of governance. I may not have done a lot of work on it. Again, it's in interest of time, because corporate governance principles, we can talk about them for long. Suffice it to say that as an NGO, we need governance structures that are clear, transparent, accountable, and that make the beneficiaries get value for their trust in the trustees and for those who have decided to support the trust. So that's a conversation we can have. But now I'm opening Chadi for Makulio and discussions or comments. Leta hiyo chombo cha kusambaza sauti. Did you want to say something? Yes. Manenge. The problem with the microphone is because there are those who are listening in, so they want also to hear your voice.
Thank you. Mine is just to, I need to understand that indemnity bit. I know you will give it to us to read more, but I just wanted to understand a little bit so that if I have a question, I can ask that indemnity part.
I have no problem.
Thank you.
The issue about indemnity is that the trust deed protects you, who is a trustee, you are an appointer, but a settler who is a trustee, from being sued for actions that he or she has taken in good faith. In the normal world, once the trust deed begins to operate, mistakes will be made, and mistakes might be costly, but they should not be associated directly with the trustee because he or she made them in good faith. But that said, even I as a lawyer, I do take indemnity cover, personal indemnity cover, every year, just in case, in the event that I make a mistake, and you as my client loses money, and you were to sue me, I should have an insurance that can pay for that kind of action. So much as we are saying that the trustees are indemnified, it's because we cannot go for them as individuals. However, we can go for them, for the organization or for the trustee. And if we go for them, the organization, once it's in place, will also insure them so that they can be legally compensated. The compensation can happen without the trustee being penalized or being asked to make good of it himself. So that's the indemnity we are talking about. That you will make mistakes, but those mistakes, as long as they're in good faith, as long as they were not deliberate, as long as you didn't do it in a corrupt way, as long as you did not benefit from that mistake, we cannot hold you to account. Yeah? Indemnity, there it is. Kuna. Okay, wacha tukuje na mama kwanza alafu tukuje kwako.
My question is there a criteria which is used in the identification of the trustees?
Good. We are going to discuss that, but we are also going to be the ones who shall identify that criteria. Because sisi ndio tunajua Makueni.
Yes, Bwana Olo.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, in the co-creation process, during the social mobilization, I think we've been having now the thinking of mwananchi wa kawaida sasa. I think now it changes our mind to now on different level. That do you think our people had relevance on this? Because they were thinking of advisory committees, they were thinking of very many things to be stakeholders on the formation of this. But I think taking care of them, I think we are here. What do you think we can do now to harmonize this?
That's why I was telling you that I'll let you sit first before I make the point. How are you? Karibu. This man is called Njeru. I'm sure you know him. You know him, eh? Okay. When I knew him, he was not bearded like this, but it's okay. So let me say this. It's okay. The consultation process produced what it produced. But now we want to begin to fine-tune what that process produced and provide mechanisms that will work in law. Okay? So what I'm saying is that if you talk about an advisory board is not binding to anybody, not to the trustees. And there's nowhere to put it. Here we are saying that trust is established by a settlor, and we are the settlers or the appointors. We are saying the trustees are appointed, and then we are saying the trustees hold assets on behalf of the beneficiaries. Now, if you create a role of an advisory, how will that role be implemented away from the settlors and the trustees working together to assess each other's progress? You cannot create an advisory. Who will it be binding against what? It cannot be binding to settlors. It cannot be binding to trustees. So who will it be binding? So you don't create a structure that doesn't get supported within a legal context. So it's okay, but now I'm giving you clarity so that you can rethink. In the absence of this input, what you did and now what we are saying, what can we rework, what can we have in, and what is likely not to be to make it. We are saying that the structures, the most important people will be those who will be members, and they are the ones who will be the beneficiaries, and then who will be in the General Assembly to make decisions. Then after that, we'll have the Board of Trustees making governance leadership decisions on behalf of the organization, but they will also have a management. Now, the management can look for advisors, can have technical advisors, can have consultants who can advise them. But whatever they do, they must answer to the Board of Trustees. But the trustees may not need an advisor. The CEO or the management may not need an advisor who is not the trustees, because the trustees are their oversight. Now, beyond them, they will work together to ensure that the members of the trust who form the General Assembly have been satisfied in terms of given reports, given audited accounts, allowed to play their role. Those are the structures that we are talking about. Yeah? Now, Jeru, I don't know that you want to listen a little bit more so that you can respond at some point, because you've just come in when we have gone. I've walked them through the issues of trust deed. I've shown them an example of a trust deed. I've shown them the structures and organs. So basically, we leave them with a structure, with a draft they can work with, populate it in terms of what they think, but it will only be complete after we have identified the trustees through a process that we shall agree today. Yes, Festus.
Yeah. I want to know the format or how someone can become a member, whether the membership will be individual or in organization, and also whether the members will have power to appoint the trustees, and also the General Assembly, whether it will be done yearly or quarterly.
In the initial stages, we are co-creators, the settlers are appointing the trustees. After the cycle, as we keep talking, various roles will be played by various people. For example, the General Assembly will appoint the settlers or appointers to fill in the position of those whose terms will expire. So the General Assembly will do that. Once the appointers have been appointed, the appointers, whenever a vacancy falls in place during in the trustees, among the trustees, the settlers will process, but this time, next time around, they will submit the name of that trustee to the General Assembly for ratification. So there is a mechanism that is being inbuilt in this for practice purposes going forward, that will involve the appointers, will involve the trustees, but eventually the General Assembly. Members of the General Assembly are assumed to be community groups, not individuals. But all these players are acting on behalf of the people of Makueni. The assumption that the people of Makueni cannot come in their own individual capacities, they come through their groups. That my interests are being taken care of by the county assembly, so we can only have so many people that go to the county assembly. And they are said to be taking care of my interests. Even if I don't think they do, but the understanding is they do. So in this particular case, the community-based organizations, the CBOs, the NGOs, the associations, whose members are ordinary Makueni people, will be the members through subscription to the trust, and then who will attend the General Assembly and who will make decisions going forward, appointing the auditor, reviewing accounts, and so on. That's the structure that we are envisaging. Now, if you have a different way of doing it, that is important, but certainly we are not looking at individuals, no. We are looking at groups, because we are saying it is community-owned, community-led, and we are assuming that those communities, the community is being represented, because it's not in individual capacity, but through representation of those CBOs, those organizations. Yes.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm sorry I came in late. I had another meeting. Mine is a procedural question. In terms of time, today being the last day, are we interacting with this document in this plenary or in groups or after?
After.
Why after?
Why after?
Yes.
Because we don't have enough time, and we don't need to kill it today. We have time to talk, to interact with it. This is the first time they have seen it. Or I am assuming so. So we shouldn't rush it. We should give them time to tear it if they want to fill in, to make their case so that we can keep the discussion going. That's my view.
Okay, maybe that goes also to AKF, because leaving me with this document as Francis, I will have my own interpretation, that it might be necessary that as a team, either in groups or wherever, we reflect on this document in line of what you are proposing and our thinking, so that we see, even if it's not today, but there must be an opportunity for us to, as a team, to interact with this document.
Francis?
Yes, Irene.
I hear you.
Good morning. Yes, that is quite possible. Is to actually say that we can reconvene as a group in a venue, so that at least there can be that discussion, and we were able to do that for Nakuru several times. But then the point that I think it needs to be clarified is that this is something that you can do on your own, and input provided for Wakili to then look and review. So track changes, document review process is something that we've extensively used in Nakuru, where the teams were meeting independent even of an AKF staff member. And that is the process of really engaging in this document. So that is quite possible to convene, and the process is the process of actually requesting for a meeting day, and we organize the venue and provide that. Is that a question answered?
Well, yes, to the fact that we will have an opportunity to interact with it, but I'm also worried of time. In that,
I think sorry, Francis. So Francis, let me go to this and say that we are going to work on a simultaneous process. One process of working on the document, and the other process of looking for trustees. And I think Martin, maybe you can clarify that, and how those two processes are so dependent on each other, and how those two processes, of course, they are time sensitive, but they have to culminate to a NED, which is the final trust document. Maybe then you can clarify so that we can understand each other in terms of the time frames. Thank you.
Yeah, and I thank you, Irene, for the inputs. And Francis, we've been on this journey. Let's not get tired, or let's not rush ourselves. It's our process. Let's be comfortable with it. Personally, I would like more time so that people can agree on a document, or can see themselves in the document, or can be helped to understand why this document proposes this or not that. Like now I've dealt with the issue of advisory, and I've said it's difficult to put an advisory group in a document where that advisory group does not have a legal role to play, because the legal role is with other organs. So that I have advised on it. But they also need time to process this. But this will go simultaneously. Today we shall agree on the process of advertising, the process of shortlisting, and the process of interviewing. So we can actually put timelines to that. In that process, we shall also agree on when the next version of the trust deed will come out. For example, now that I'll give you version 1, when will you come back with your comments so that I can produce version 2? then if we agree on version 2, we don't need to go to version 3. But if there are some issues that we have not agreed, we can go to another version. Then by that time, we will have also been, we'll have the process of interviewing or applications coming through, and we might be interviewing. By the time we do interviews, we may have agreed on the trust deed, so that when you bring in the trustees, they will also have an opportunity. The other day when I was meeting with the trustees for Nakuru, I also gave them the opportunity now to go through the document. I left them with the document overnight. I told them, if there's anything you want us to look at, you don't understand, let's change, or let's take care of your views. So that way, they were able to interact with it, and they were able to own the document. So I'm thinking that a process is important, and we shall work it together.
Sorry, again, not that I want to take long, but I think I'm looking at the timelines which you projected yesterday with the date in mind, and therefore we need to work backwards. Listening to the process, to the discussion at the point I came in, certain processes have to happen before we get finalizing the deed. Not even registration, submission for registration, but finalizing it. And then you submit it. If we look at the date, the final date or the end date, and work backwards, how much of time do you, being the legal person, do you anticipate you require to get a document that is acceptable to USAID? Not only a document, because there's a document and there are also structures and there are also plans, as much as we are talking about integrating the processes. Let's work backwards so that we see how we can be timely.
And I think there will be a session for that, so that when we want to talk about the next steps, we will start by when do we want what, then we work backwards. Because we need trustees. We'll agree by when. We need to agree the trust deed. We'll also agree by when. For purposes of registration and for purposes of completion of the document, it will only be completed after the trustees are in place. Then that, I can tell you, I will have the registration by that. But in my estimation, everything should happen between now and April, including registration. That gives time for people to apply, time for people to be processed, time for people to be interviewed, and time for people to be vetted as trustees. And also time for us to piga msasa, the trust deed until we say, bas, wow, netua mini ya wiyaka, nantua mina weusu, kwanzia ila nzeo, nzia ila onde, tuitikile. Wau tuiva mwe? Aya, mbea. Bishop, ni idhoni mbea nutuhoe nundu tuendai?
Ingine tunaambiwa tusiongee sana, tuombe, lakini tutaomba na tuongee kidogo. You splashed something that hit my mind, and I was trying to think through that. Of course, the trustees are the custodians of everything to do with the society. No doubt about it, and they have a legal standing on that. But in the event, okay, if they're the same are the ones that will also now craft some other levels, according to you, other levels within the hierarchy of that society from bottom up to the trustees, if they are the ones to do so. Now, in the event they collude to do something sinister with the funds or with the management of this, then who will account them? Who will hold them accountable for that? Because we shall have always an annual general meetings, and they will stand up and say everything they have done, and they talk and talk and talk. But we have seen organizations that have been, riddled with corruption and other underworldly deals. Let me finish up.
Forum. Go back to the text. The trust deed. I need the forum.
Now,
Sorry?
you said the advisory has no legal standing. That was your statement. But I wonder...
Organs. As you talk, I'm looking for... Where are the organs? The General Assembly and whatever.
Yeah. Now, is the constitution that is binding in this in this society, in this trust, is it only for the trustees and not for the settlers? Because where is the say of the settlers in the event the trustees mess up? And how do they come in, seeing that they are the bosses up there?
Bishop, what I would advise is just take time and read this document, because the question is there. Settlers appoint trustees. Settlers have a forum. Go down. Settlers and appointers and trustees have a forum in which you can ask questions, in which you can ask for clarifications, in which you can raise the red flag. If you have the red flag, there's a mechanism in which a trustee can be made to resign, or the trustees can be made to resign, or can vacate office. If it's bad, you can generate an agenda there which can lead to action. Eventually, the General Assembly, which is up there, has a mandate in which, if it is invoked, it will be able to generate action. So there are some inbuilt. It may not be 100%. It may not be foolproof. We have an opportunity to improve where we think we want to improve. What I want us to do is to assume, and let me turn that question. When you elect an MCA and they go to the county assembly, you have those fears as well. What if the fellow turns rogue? So what are the mechanisms that you use as a person who elected the fellow? One, you can sit there and wait for the next election. So but wait, I'm coming. One, you can sit there and wait for the election. The other ones, the law provides a mechanism in which you can recall the MCA. So that's a mechanism of recall. Are you being an advisor? Are you being even mentioned? No, you are said as a person who is responsible or who is a member of the ward. You can initiate. You are a registered voter, you can initiate it. In this trust, it's not anybody else who can take action, called an advisor or whatever. Between the trustees themselves, the trust says they can act together to say, Trustee Ngina should leave, and there's a room for that. Or they can act together to see whether there's a problem with management. So it's not true that the trustees will run everything. No. There's a role for the settlers or the appointers. There's a role for the trustees, but they are all acting for the best interest of the beneficiary. So if the beneficiary were to say, you people are not acting in my best interest, do they have a recall? Do they have a mechanism? Yes, through the General Assembly. Yes, through petitioning their settlers. So there are mechanisms inbuilt. But when all is said and done, this trust deed is being created under law. And I have mentioned that in those statutes. And I have said that in the event of an issue, you can invoke what is called the Fair Administrative Action Act. And you say there was no notice given, there was something. So you can actually invoke the law and bring it. Or we have also put in this place, the dispute resolution mechanism. Yeah. There is this deed and its performance shall be governed by and construed in all respects in accordance with the laws of Kenya. So there is a dispute mechanism in the event that there is reason for a dispute to be lodged and to be entertained, and a mechanism is there. So I want to say that let us not be driven by fear. Let us be driven by hope and assume that chochote chawezekana, that we are able to manage ourselves, we will be able to ward off corruption or anything else, because we will be vigilant. They say the price of liberty is an eternal vigilance. Yes, sir.
Martin?
Yes,
Martin?
Irene. After I finished with
Martin?
Yes, please.
Now, I've seen there are two documents. The notes you have been taking us through, and the one he has shared us with the Nakuru Trust. The notes that we are going to interact with, will you give us the two versions or just one version?
The other one is not a version, the other one is a presentation. The real version of the trust deed is this one, which you need. But the notes, again, we agreed that we can give you. Yes, Irene?
Yeah, I wanted to also add to your comment to Pastor. I think it's important. The provision of the trust deed is that the meeting of the appointors or settlers with the trustees to be at least once a year. And that means that when you're building trust, there can be more frequent meetings than once a year. But of course, I think there is also need to respect that you have to give the process room to start working in order for you to have basis for meetings. So in places I've seen at the beginning, meetings being more frequent, maybe 3 times a year, and then they start to wade down as the organizations start taking root. So it depends on how you want to run it in Makueni, but there is a provision for the settlers or the appointors to meet the trustees more often. The trust deed provides for at least once a year. Thank you.
Thank you for that assurance, because again, it is in our hands as long as we are acting in good faith to ensure that there's regular meetings. The problem is if you are summoning them and they don't think there's reason. I mean, I guess we need to build that trust. The trust comes because we are meeting regularly, because we are working together. But if there's no trust, then tutakuwa tunaanza kusikia wrangles. We will just land in wrangles. So, utmost good faith on the part of settlers, utmost good faith on the part of trustees, and all of us involved is what is called for. Any other comments? Because we need to break for tea, I'm told. Na chai ni haki yenu. Yes, sir.
So, Wakil, I wanted your perspective on the issue of settlers and trustees. So you had said that maybe the settlers and trustees will be meeting maybe once, will be having a forum. So I wanted your clarification, maybe apart from that forum and the issue of appointing initial trustees, is there any other role, legally speaking, for the settlers? Thank you.
The question for me is, should there be any other role? If you have created and you have transferred the assets, then you watch and see how those assets are being managed. But we are saying you can have regular meetings, you can have conversations, dialogue, but you have transferred. By the time the trustees come in place, you are passed on the baton, you are passed on the governance of this institution. So I want us to know that we should diminish, we should reduce for the trustees to do their job.
Yeah, so the main agenda of those forums or other meetings, what role will you play there from legal perspective? Is it
defined? And again, when you see the draft,
yeah,
you should look at that one and say, this is not enough, I also need this and this, and let's see whether that is something that we can agree on. So I'm not saying that what we have said here is the be and all. Yeah. You might have a different view, or you might have something in addition. Feel free to bring it up.
Okay. Also, the last question, you had talked briefly about selection of the trustees, where you had indicated the staggery mechanism, where the trustees will be taking different time on that board. So I wanted to seek your clarification, as you had alluded in your initial presentation, that the first trustees will be, maybe settlers will play a role in selecting them. So the consecutive trustees, assuming maybe one person is maybe exiting, who will be responsible for the selection or replacement?
Can I say that that is a good question, but again, can we look at it? Because there are some provisions. You know, you may decide that you don't want 5, 7, 8. You may say 3, 4. You can change, you can decide your way. But the point I'm making is that there should be no time when all trustees leave at the same time. Yeah. And there's reasons for a trustee to leave.
Yeah.
And it can be asked to leave. But there are also mechanisms that are in the trust deed on how to replace a trustee.
Yeah.
Now, interact with those mechanisms and see, because what, I don't want to answer you and say this is, I want it to be something that we can keep talking about so that we see whether we have it covered. Are you getting me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's no, this is the position. I'm saying there are some presentations here. Look at them, see whether they satisfy you or whether they can be done differently. And I'm not just saying you alone, I'm saying all of us, isn't it? You can hear his question, and I don't think I should answer it in a very clear way, because there's no clear way. It's all our business. We are still constructing our side. What do we want from Makueni? This is our opportunity.
Maybe on that document,
yes,
that you will share with us, does it specify, maybe does it give a guideline, or we are the people to come up with the guideline? I think that was the clarification I needed.
It gives some guidelines in there, but remember that we need to develop more bylaws. What Irene will tell you, we'll need a board charter. We'll need a number of documents that will help guide our habits. For example, a board charter will say how a trustee may leave, how a trustee may be replaced. Of course, it has to be consistent with that, with what the trust deed is saying. So yes, there will be more guidelines developed. As it is, even the Constitution of Kenya, good as it is,
yeah,
we are always finding something to add. That's why even BBI is here. So we are always wanting something else, because in practice, we will discover things we had not thought about and we'll want to do something about them.
So, Santi.
Okay, thanks. First us, and then we see whether we can break for tea.
Yes, mine is on you see, we will be owning assets at long last, and the functions of the Board of Trustees is the same functions I see to the Board of Directors in a normal company. So my question is, who will be the custodian of our assets, knowing that there will be conflict of interest within the trustees?
My friend, there is even conflict of interest between Uhuru and Ruto, but they are our presidents. So once you have given people power, leave them to exercise it. Do not worry. I'm telling you, Jesus Christ told us not to worry, because he leaves us a helper. God is still on the throne. The law is still in place. Courts are still in place. Dispute resolution mechanisms are still in place. But more importantly, God is still on the throne. So do not worry. And that's what Jesus said. Worry not. I wish, Mutavania, why don't you come and pray for this kind of worries and then pray for tea? Bishop, pray for these kind of things.